welcome back to the Don and Gino Real Estate and Finance Show right here in your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS.
And remember, our goal is always to guide you to personal and financial wellness. Well, welcome back to the Don and Gino Real Estate and Finance Show this fine Saturday morning. Hopefully you're enjoying your time here with myself and Lou Esbin, my guest today, while Don is taking a welcome hiatus and leaving us to discuss, I think we're solving all the world's problems right here, Lou, today. No?
No, don't put that pressure on us.
Well, we did teach you how to borrow $50,000 from the IRS at a very low interest rate just recently. So if you missed that, go to donandgino.com. Listen to the first segment of the show. Lou's not happy with me promoting that.
I really am not. But Gino will make all the disclosures and waivers and whatnot.
I didn't make the rules, right? I just know they exist. So one of the things that we were discussing is we're in this really beautiful growth economy. You've got arguably you've got all what I call the nice numbers, right? You've got 2% inflation, 3% GDP, 4% unemployment, 5 to 6% housing growth. I mean, you've got a really nice recipe for probably one of the best economies in the last 40, 50 years. But there's a giant button there. We still have some legacy issues that we're kind of turning a blind eye on. That came out of the last recession. So we've inflated our way out of the recession, but what's left over? What are still the casualties?
So here's what we're seeing, and being one of 165 certified bankruptcy specialists in the state, and having done this for 35 years, very often my practice can be kind of like the canary in the coal mine. Okay, what are we seeing, and what is it that can be looked at to see where we're going? And there's several things. One of the things that's coming up are what we refer to as zombie seconds.
I know, okay? I love that term. Did you trademark that? You should.
No. Zombie second. So what's a zombie second? A zombie second is a second on someone's house, a HELOC usually, that has not been paid for about 10 or so years.
It's been a while now.
Usually it was a Countrywide or one of those various entities that no longer exist that did these HELOCs.
And they just kind of went away one day,
Well,
right?
They didn't go. What happened was they charged them off. Okay. And one of the misconceptions is this concept of a charge-off. Now, I'm not a tax attorney, but I understand a little bit. So a charge-off is an accounting practice that's taken by a creditor who hasn't been paid or does not believe that there's a reasonable likelihood that they will be paid. Okay, so they have a tax benefit. They take a charge-off, and they then have a tax benefit for themselves.
They write it off as bad debt.
Okay. On the other side, because we have double entry accounting, the borrower has income. Okay,
right.
So if they
forgiveness of debt is seen as income in a 1099.
Right. So they'll get this letter saying that that's been charged off, and typically they'll get a 1099, right? And they get that, and their accountant or their tax professional may say, well, you have to pay taxes on it, and then they will then go to others who may not be as aware and should never give any type of tax or legal advice and say, oh, you don't have to pay that anymore.
Right.
The problem is that a charge-off or a bad debt write-off, as some will refer to as a 1099, it merely says, we don't think we can collect. But it doesn't mean you don't owe the debt.
Right. It doesn't mean it's been forgiven.
Correct.
Right. So it's just been placed off to the side.
To be sold.
As debt.
Okay. So what happens is that those entities
at a discount, because they already took the write-off, so they
discount.
probably sell it at 10 cents on the dollar or something.
So there are these entities that have arisen that have bought up all of this charged off seconds.
Okay.
And they wait. Now, one of them has the name of Trojan Capital, right? Which brings to mind, for anyone who studied mythology, a Trojan horse. And that's exactly what it is. They come to your door, right? And all of a sudden, they're taking your house. Because what do? They have a note, which is enforceable, and they have a deed of trust, which is enforceable.
And you haven't made a payment in
You
10
haven't
years.
made a payment in 10 years.
So you're definitely in default.
And they want to foreclose, right?
Okay.
We call them zombie seconds. So what do? Right? So people come to me because I'm a contributing author on a book on this subject, and I wrote a book on bankruptcy, and they go, what do we do? So I have to start thinking. I contact the editors of my book. I bring the subject up, and we think we might have an answer. Okay, because what you have to understand is there's a promissory note and there's a deed of trust. Okay. So a promissory note, in and of itself, if it hasn't been paid, arguably it has a 6-year statute of limitations to enforce and collect. So if the debt has not been paid or acknowledged in 6 or more years, it's arguable that promissory note may not be collectible.
Nice. Well, that's a good little tip. That's a really nice piece. That's a golden nugget from Lou Esbin here.
But hold your horses.
But wait, there's more.
Hold your Trojan horse. Okay? The deed of trust, which represents the pledging of a house as collateral to pay the loan, has a statute of limitations of 10 years after the maturity date stated on the deed of trust. And if there's no maturity date stated on the deed of trust, 60 years.
Wow.
Right?
Okay. Well, let me tell you, on a home equity line of credit, since that's what most of these are, as they're structured today, most of them are 30-year loans. So
Correct.
the deed of trust would show a 30-year expiration. So all of these HELOCs would still be well within the period of time that they could enforce a lien that's on the property.
Correct.
So number one is if you sell, you got to pay it. If you refi, you got to pay it. But assuming you don't want to do any of those things.
Now it becomes more complicated, okay? So there is a case that says, notwithstanding the fact that the promissory note may not be collectible, the deed of trust continues to be enforceable. And you kind of scratch your head, well, how can you enforce a deed of trust if the underlying debt obligation is no longer enforceable? Okay? But there's a case that says it is.
Because when you took the loan, you took it with the intent.
Well, but when let's break down your pronouns. When you, meaning an individual, borrows the money, they sign a promissory note, which is your personal individual promise to pay back the money.
That's right.
Right.
It's a promise to pay. It's a pledge.
No, it's a promise. When you sign a deed of trust, you pledge your collateral as security to repay the loan.
Got it.
Okay? So you have a loan that without the deed of trust may not be enforceable, but the deed of trust is enforceable, and so the case law says you can then foreclose.
Now, this is California specific, right? Every state is different?
Yeah, I'm only licensed to practice in California.
Okay, perfect. Just wanted to clarify
So-
that in case
so-
somebody's watching the show in Minnesota. Make sure they don't say, Mr. Lou Esbin said I can't.
No.
Yeah.
So now enter a bankruptcy case, right? Because in bankruptcy is personal and not what we call AMRAM or property. So the argument now is, can I go to bankruptcy court and say to the bankruptcy judge, yes, Your Honor, I know the deed of trust is enforceable, but the promissory note is not. And so I want the debtor to get a discharge of the promissory note. They can only work in a Chapter 13 or a Chapter 11. The debtor gets a discharge of the promissory note, which is no longer enforceable. So I object to the claim and I say the promissory note is not enforceable in the matter of statute of limitations. And the judge says, but the deed of trust is enforceable. Yes, Your Honor, according to California law, the deed of trust is enforceable, but during the course of the bankruptcy for 5 years, they can't do anything. That's what I'm teeing up.
Got it.
Right?
Yeah.
Now
you put the Trojan horse on stay for another 5 years.
Well, but
potentially.
of course, my colleagues look at me and go, "You're crazy." I'm going, "Okay, that's fine, but I'm going to try."
All right. Well,
Right.
and so if you find yourself in one of these situations and you're looking for someone to give you some answers, or at least try,
You have to try.
You got to try.
Because here's the thing. So
I mean, this could be a $200,000, $300,000 home equity line of credit.
Well,
This
yeah,
is not necessarily chump change.
And the problem is that because property values have appreciated, we can no longer strip away the second.
Right.
Right. So you get the property valued, and the value comes in $10,000, $15,000 over the first, I can't strip the second because there's equity. Right? So the second may be $200,000, but there's $15,000 of equity. It's enough to
grab onto.
To grab onto. So, but if I say that the promissory note is unenforceable as a matter of law, and they can enforce the deed of trust, but only at the end of the Chapter 13, I now have leverage to negotiate.
Wow. Well, you could tell that Lou Esbin has more knowledge of the matter than most of us would ever care or want to learn about it. However, it might be relevant to you. If you have a home equity line, if you have a zombie second, if you know what Lou's talking about because you've received that scary notice that says your home might be foreclosed. Once again, Lou, how could they get a hold of you?
Esbinlaw.com, ESBINLAW.com.
And so many other financial managers. If you want to open a business, if you want to merge a business, sell a business, do any business planning. Startups, any of those things, Lou's a great resource. Please reach out to Lou Esbin at Esbin Law. Thanks for joining us again today, buddy, and stay tuned for the second half of the show.